day, everyone, and thank you for joining us here at Seaford & Brew for our economic briefing. I am Jamie Sumner, Chief Analyst, and for this week's briefing, we want to review over some of those top CD specials that are out there across the United States. So once again, what I did is I went out on the Best Cash Cow website and I compiled a list of all the top rates within the United States, state by state. And we plot it on this map, and what we find is the highest rate is in Ohio at 3.5% for 60 months. Not a bad rate for 60 months for a CD. And then the second highest rate was out here in New York at 3.3% for 84 months. So these are the different types of rates that are found out there across the United States by the state individually. Another way to look at this is to plot it with rate and term for each state. So every dot represents a state, and we can see the clustering right here around that 5-year mark. That's 60 months. So that seems to be that term where we're doing a lot of rates, and on average it's about 2 3/4 to 3% on average for that rate, that 5-year rate. So if you're a little higher or a little under, you're kind of in that range of these specials. But we can see here's the Ohio at a 350 up there at 60 months, and then out here is that New York at 84 months at the 330. We do have some shorter specials down here. We have this 24-month just under that 2.5%. And then we have this 12-month fairly high rate at that 275. So that's impressive when we look at the different rates. It's scary to think that we're talking about these types of rates on CDs compared to where we've been over the past couple of years. But when we look at not just the top rate, but the second and third top rates, we can continue to see that clustering around that 60-month range, as well around that 3-year range. So these are the two areas that banks tend to be focusing on. And of course, we have those odd month, odd term CD specials out there that have worked in the past. When we look at, though, those additions to CDs, the add-ons, the basic specials that we tend to work in the past continue to work. We have the bump up, if you recall. That bump up CD allows the depositor to bump up their rate one time, and I've even seen some out there with a double bump where they can bump it twice during that term. So that's a good little add-on for those depositors. It makes them feel like they have some control. However, statistics show that a lot of times about 80% of those individuals will never bump up that CD. And those are typically done on about a 3-year CD. We also have the step up, if you recall. The step up CD gives you steps in the rate throughout the term. So you'll have one rate for the first year, and then the second year to be a higher rate, and the third year will be an even higher rate. And then you have to give them the blended APY there. So that's one item to also help depositors feel like they're continuing to see an increase in their overall rate. Remember, this is all about behavioral psychology here and how individuals think about their investments. And if they tend to see their rates go up over time, they will be happy. But of course, we set it up so that it matches around that average APY of the specials out there. And then you have that in and out option where you allow the depositors to put money in or take money out throughout the life of that CD. That's another option that makes it more work like an MMDA account, and you have a little less of control on that cash flow, but it is an option if you want to throw it out there. That would be in lieu of maybe a higher rate, and that'll give them the option to put money in or take that money out. But when we're looking at these, we also have to tie in there is that option, or not the option, but the mandate that they need to bring more or new funds into these accounts. We can't just let them sweep over from their savings accounts or money market accounts. It needs to be some funding of new deposits. And that's the important thing in here, because we don't want to have that cannibalization of your current depositors, and therefore the cost of funds going up even higher than anticipated due to the marginal cost analysis. So when we look at that, and when we are going through this process of thinking about these rates, we have to keep in mind where those alternative funding rates are. The Federal Home Loan Bank, Cedars, all those different broker deposits out there. And you can see with the different rates and specials that we have plotted here, we also put on here the Federal Home Loan Bank curve from Pittsburgh. And you can see that these are the fixed rate items, and there are some institutions that are paying up above that Federal Home Loan Bank curve. Now, of course, there could be reasons. Perhaps they are tapped out at the FHLB, or they just prefer not to use the FHLB borrowings and are willing to pay up a little more on their funding from CDs in order to draw those deposits in. So what we want to typically stay at, maybe a little, not too far above, 5-10 basis points above the FHLB curve, or else you're leaving extra money on the table. So that's one thing, one way to look at the CD specials. We also have to take in consideration the movement of the yield curve, and over time we've seen this, the short end really picking up, the long end moving up not nearly as much. In fact, when we go back to 2016, that spread between a 10-year and a 2-year at 125 basis points, now we're down to just 24 basis points. So this is where we are, and this is going to continue to happen. When we look at the forward curve, we can see this is a spot curve as of the 18th, and out 3 years, we just have a very flat yield curve. And the interesting thing you can see and notice here, years 1, 2, and 3 are almost exactly the same. The push up in short rates is supposed to happen over the next year. So this is the time we want to try and lock in some of those rates. But I wouldn't go too far beyond 3 years in the maturity. And the reason is this: if this is 3 years out and we have a very flat yield curve, that is an indication based off of history that we could see maybe a recession or some financial situation happen that could lead to a lowering of the overall yield. So when we're thinking about going out, extending our liabilities, I would not go too far beyond that 3-year mark, just in case we see some type of a correction or a pullback in the overall economy leading to lower rates. We don't want to be sitting here 4 or 5 years from now with these rates, if rates have come down. We've experienced that in the past, and we just don't want to make that mistake again. Well, that's what we have for you this week. We look forward to future briefings with you. Have a great week, everyone.